Who would bet their own money on gateway casinos? But there's someone who would invest other people's money in it. The casino just got the jackpot of $200 million from this government. With the financial genius over there who invested $200 million of our tax dollars in this failing casino firm, please stand up.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. While the Conservatives...
Now, Mr. Charest learned about the trucker convoy on CBC, like other Liberals, and he misrepresented them. He believes that I should be censored. He believes I should be cancelled from this leadership race and disqualified, in his words, because I don't share his Liberal viewpoint. That is the kind of cancel culture and censorship you would expect from Justin Trudeau, but instead we're getting it from this Liberal on this stage. And frankly, Mr. Charest, for you to talk about law and order is a little bit rich, given that your party, your Liberal Party, took $500,000 of illegal donations when you were the head of that party. The average trucker has more integrity in his pinky finger than you had in your entire scandal-plagued Liberal cabinet.
Finance critic Pierre Poilievre joins us from Ottawa. Look, Mr. Poilievre, I've spoken to a lot of Liberals. They say it's quite clear that your party doesn't have confidence in this government, that you wanted to set up an anti-corruption committee, which they said implies that you believe they're corrupt. Your own leader said, I don't have confidence in this government. If you don't have confidence in the government, say so and try to get an election. I don't know what the problem is.
There's no problem.
So you're happy to go to an election now?
We're happy to get to the truth. And that's why we've asked the Parliament to set up a committee to complete the investigations into the scandal, which saw the Prime Minister accept his family accept $500,000 in payoffs from an organization, and then have him turn around and pay that organization $500 million through what we now know as the WE scandal.
They've said, look, we'll set up another committee. There'll be 6 Liberals and 6 members of the opposition. There'll be a Liberal chair, so that means control of the committee will remain with the opposition. They say that'll do the job. What's wrong with that committee structure?
Only 2 things. One, their motion puts a Liberal in charge of the chairmanship, which means that he can just turn the meeting off whenever that we get too close to the truth, as Mr. Easter has been doing. And 2, they have not included in the motion a requirement the government unblack out all of the scandal documents that came back to us covered in black ink. We just need to set up a committee that has an opposition chair and that allows the opposition members to get access to the WE scandal documents, which Trudeau has so far blacked out. No need for an election.
Then we have here an email from Craig Kielburger to Bill Morneau. And, you know, we'd love to learn about the attached documents in it, but unfortunately, in what is to become a trend throughout this package, it's all the relevant information in the 2 documents are completely blacked out. Another email from Craig Kielburger that went to someone in the government the same day he spoke to Bill Morneau on the phone, but we don't know who received the email, that's blacked out, or what the email said, all blacked out. Here's an email from the minister responsible for the department that granted the $500 million to her top bureaucrat. Again, all the substance is blacked out. And that would not be the first time. Next page, blacked out. This page, blacked out. This page, blacked out. This page, blacked out. Why don't we ask what's in those pages at a parliamentary committee? Well, I'll tell you why. Justin Trudeau shut down those parliamentary committees. When did he do it? The same day these documents became public. What a coincidence.
The country,
Mr.
many,
Prime
many
Minister,
years.
you are being asked a direct question at a parliamentary committee.
Support her because she does her own work, and I'm
Point
proud
of order.
of the work that she does. But I do not feel that it is
Answer
my
the question.
responsibility to peer into the work my mother is doing, because I have
Point of order to suspend.
that she's doing.
Point of order to suspend.
I've come to learn that the chairperson's power has gone out and is no longer part of this meeting. May I propose that we?
It's okay. We can keep
for
Prime Minister and I can continue talking.
No.
I suspected that might be a problem. It's very convenient timing for the lights to go out.
Look, I got a message to the effect that his power has gone out. I have no reason to distrust him.
I hope you don't pull the fire alarm now.
Yeah, well, look, there's no intent in my own private home here in the middle of a pandemic. I don't have a fire alarm. I propose
the general process is that the vice chair assumes the chairing of the meeting. So we'll continue.
And that would be me. So we'll continue the meeting. And I now give the floor to the member for Carleton. Mr. Prime Minister, you have, I'm going to ask you one last time, how much did your family get from this organization?
And what can Parliament do? Well, we have something called the Finance Committee, perfectly suited to help the government and Canadians get through a crisis like this. Over 800 people have called to ask to be witnesses at the Finance Committee. Small businesses, labor leaders, other groups are calling, demanding that their voices be heard. Why have they been silenced? Well, because this government has paralyzed the Finance Committee in order to cover up the we documents. You remember those 1,000 pages of documents? We simply asked that they be released without black ink all over them. Well, in order to avoid doing that, Liberals have begun to give speech after speech, almost 30 hours of speeches, 171,000 words spoken, paralyzing the committee for 5 weeks. And these speeches, what are they about? Are they about the people who are suffering because their businesses are closed or their jobs have been shut down? No, they're speeches about the Christian Bible, the Jewish Torah, the ancient Islamic texts, the Quran. They've given speeches about Greek philosophers. They even gave a speech about the cartoon character Pokeroo. Imagine you're a small business owner. You turn on television to find out what the Finance Committee is doing to save your business, and you see a Liberal MP giving an extensive speech about the cartoon character Pokeroo in order to run down the clock so that no one can find out what's behind the black ink on those we documents. That's the priority of this government.
Carleton.
Yesterday, when I asked about the 850,000 Canadians who've lost their jobs, giving Canada the highest unemployment rate in the G7, the Prime Minister told a childish joke, and he sat down and smirked. He should know that for every 1 percentage point increase in unemployment, we get a 2 percentage point increase in suicides. This is people's lives at stake. They want to know how they're going to pay the bills. We have the worst job record in the G7. Will we get a plan for paychecks, or is the Prime Minister just going to sit there and smirk?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me first correct the record and point out that at 64.3%, Canada has a higher labour force participation rate than Germany at 56.1%, the United States at 61.3%, and Japan at 62%. And let me also say this. I absolutely believe that every Canadian who is unemployed is facing a personal tragedy.
Member for Carleton.
Well, what a shame that the Prime Minister didn't have the guts to stand up and answer the question himself. The reality is that he has said 49 different times that the best measure of job market success is the unemployment rate. And now that we have the highest unemployment rate in the G7, they want to change the measurement. They say we should celebrate them for the recovery of lost jobs. Well, of course, Canada had the most jobs to recover because it had the biggest job losses. People don't want any more games with statistics. They need paychecks in their bank accounts and food on the table. When will they get it?
But I'm really curious to see how the member opposite is going to contort himself and twist himself into knots when I ask the question about when he was a member of government, they had the lowest unemployment rate since the Great Depression. And what did they have to show for it? $150 billion in debt. And you know what they didn't have? A global pandemic that shot down economies everywhere. So, Madam Speaker, what exactly does this member propose when they added that much debt and had such a terrible unemployment record?
A member for Carleton.
I think the member accidentally told the truth when she said we had the lowest unemployment since the Great Depression. She was right that we did have the lowest unemployment in the G7. We had the best record going through the Great Global Recession, which is interesting because now we have the second worst, the second highest unemployment in the G7. Only socialist Italy is higher, and the Italian socialist policies are the ones that this government is working hardest to emulate. Even France, which used to be socialist and is reversing those policies, has now lowered its unemployment below Canada's. And here in Canada, we see a government shutting down our economy, trying to nationalize economic activity, getting exactly the same kinds of predictable results that those policies always produce. That member should look at the magnificent success and the world-famous actions of the previous Conservative government to get us through that recession. This government could learn a lot from that. Well, Mr. Speaker, the member is absolutely right. We did do a panel yesterday, at which point I asked, outside of the walls of this House, when the Minister of Finance sold his 680,000 shares in Morneau Chapelle. I also enumerated all the facts leading up to that sale. And I am absolutely confident that everything I've said out there and in here is true. Would he commit that if I go out and repeat my question in the lobby at this moment, that the finance minister will meet me there and answer the question? I tried asking the minister if he sold 680,000 shares on November 30th inside the House of Commons, and now I invited him to come and answer that question outside of the House of Commons, and I know the House will be disappointed to learn that he did not show up to answer the question. So, will the Prime Minister answer it on his behalf? Who was it that sold 680,000 Morneau Chapelle shares 1 week before tax measures were introduced on the floor of the House?
Secrétaire parlementaire.